So sometimes when you get to a service review and they don't ask you the questions that you expect them to ask, not necessarily everything is fine. It's like they're not interested. And you can see the difference between year one and year two. So what happened? Why their level of engagement in QBRs drops? Why they opened a certain number of tickets before and now it drops? So I think we misinterpreted some of the signals.
Welcome to Customer Unsuccess, the podcast where we cut out the noise and talk with real leaders about their hardest lessons in customer success and other go-to-market motions. I'm your host, Joe DeGrande, and in each episode, we're going to unpack real challenges from real leaders, failed tech implementations, a strategy that didn't yield results, or difficult customers. But more importantly, we're going to take those lessons learned and share them with you so that way you can avoid those same mistakes with your team. So if you're in customer success, sales, or other go-to-market motions, stick around to hear from the best. Now let's dig into it. On today's episode, I'm joined by Galon, and he's the Chief Customer Officer of Obrela and the mind behind CS Cycle. We get into two hard-won lessons. First, the surprise renewal that wasn't, and how subtle engagement signals masked a looming churn because the budget owner wasn't the only decision maker, and how sales closed a deal as if a solution already existed, which forced them into a design-on-the-fly implementation to earn long-term trust. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Now let's dive in. Cool. Should we kick this off?
Definitely. I'm up for it.
Awesome. Let's do it. Well, Guy, thanks so much for coming on the Customer Unsuccess podcast.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Well, if you're not familiar with Guy, he's the Chief Customer Officer at Obrela, many years of experience within customer success. So it's great to have you on.
Thank you very much, Joey. It's been a pleasure, and it's very good that we have a chance to meet, one-on-one.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I guess like in terms of like, customer success, right? We talk a lot. We've had obviously many conversations as well as our conversations through success hackers, like webinars and all that good stuff. But there's always this challenge with communication with different stakeholders, and obviously mainly sales, right? In a number of different ways. And essentially the biggest differences that I've seen within sales and customer success, sales, obviously it's pretty funnel, but like when they build out that relationship, it's just the beginning. And once they're done, that's it. Customer success is there for the long haul. They're there for either a year, many years, depending on if you shift the books, depending on your organization. And I know we had a couple of stories when we chatted prior to the call about like some of those challenges. I know you had some stories as well, and we could jump in to a variety, but yeah, wanted to kind of cue us off, tee us off.
So generally, before talking about specific, I truly believe in a very close relationship and collaboration between sales and CS. And I think this is a subject that since I've stepped into customer success, always been the case. Years ago, I think it was more difficult. Sales dump certain contracts or certain engagements on customer success and move on. I think in recent years, what I see or hear, and also what I kind of preach and try to implement myself with my team, is very close collaboration with sales. So understanding which customers we target, sharing success stories, sharing lessons learned from existing engagements, helping sales to sell to new customers by sharing the right stories, by building the right case studies, by building the right advocacy. So I'm trying to give as much reasons for them not to dump things on my table, but actually continue the conversation, not to mention the collaboration on renewals and upsells and CS helping to drive more revenue. So, sales are sales. That's their job. That's fine. If we give them good reasons to collaborate, they will collaborate for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely always, it's very important, right? I think it's extremely important because, and the success stories is interesting too. I want to definitely come back to that, later on, but it's important to have that too, because again, also you have potentially, I don't want to say conflicting goals, but your goals are different, right? And when it comes to new business versus post sales,
correct. But we also aligned on some of the upsells, on upsells and renewals. So, in a way, we are different in other means, especially if finance know how to do it. we also aligned as well.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And I guess talk to me about the story when we're, it's around renewals, right? I think we were talking about where, and this happens quite a bit, right? Like I'm sure we've all heard them, but I'm always curious to hear everybody's like kind of experience with this, where a renewal is essentially a surprise, right? There's a lot of different, times where people have kind of the rug pulled underneath them, right? Maybe the health score, and that's obviously a debate within itself, right? Showing green or you think things are going well, but then all of a sudden you're kind of shocked. I know we were talking about kind of a scenario where, that kind of came into play.
Yeah, that was a very painful one. But and as I said to you, I told you this will be a bit of a whitelisted with no specific mentions of names, customers, territories,
of course,
on anything else. It was an enterprise customer. So yes, health score is just one aspect, but we did have the relationship. So, you come to renewal or get closer to renewal. That was even, I think, more than a 1 year. Maybe it was a 2 years renewal. I don't remember. And every time we engaged the customer, there was a feeling that the team we worked with, and again, I'm talking about enterprise customers, so there was a big team headed by let's say the not decision maker, but the budget owner for sure, and maybe partially decision maker. But definitely the decision was also with his team. And we kind of assumed that, we got the team under our control. And I think that was the thing that we were eventually blindsided by. And we kept a very good relationship with the whoever not led the team, but was responsible for the team, because he had other roles and responsibilities. And like every time we would meet him, at least 3-4 times a year, we would meet the team. We kind of thought that the renewal is in our pocket, because he said, we are very happy. The team says good things about you. The only thing that we didn't do retrospectively is get all of them together in the same room to actually hear, because his team had a different agenda at the time, not because we were doing right or wrong. We were doing fine. We did not, let's say, build enough relationship to not block somebody else from building relationship for over a year, because it was a 2-year contract. So the other vendor had enough time to build a relationship, to get to a certain situation where they did their own proof of concept, or they did a comparison. They said, there's not much of a difference. These guys are closer to us. I don't know if there was even a budget difference, a price difference. So, push comes to shove, when we came to the real discussion, we found out that they were not planning, unfortunately, to do renewal. And that was a big shock for us, thinking that we got it under control.
Got it. Yeah. So it's interesting. I guess, like, tell me more about that, right? Like, it sounds like there were no indications whatsoever of how this renewal was coming about. It was you were basically,
retrospectively they were okay. So that's the lesson learned, right? So
yeah,
I don't say he decision maker, budget owner, because eventually we thought he was the decision maker and budget owner solely, but he was the budget owner. Of course, he had to approve the budget. We knew that the budget was there, so that was not an issue. The issue is that we misinterpreted some signals. Maybe today you could say maybe AI will pick the signals. I'm not sure. In an enterprise environment, when you have a big team, it was a big team. I'm talking about 10, 15 people with two let's say champions that were more influencing the team. And I think we just missed some of the signals. So sometimes when you get to a service review, or I call it service review, it was a QBR.
sure.
And they don't ask you the questions that you expect them to ask. So something should trigger an alert. It's not like everything is fine. Not necessarily everything is fine. It's like they're not interested, because they are. I'm talking about the second year, not the first year. And you can see the difference between year 1 and year 2, or let's say year 1 and the second part of year 2. So what happened? Why their level of engagement in QBRs drops? Why they're asking less questions? Why they opened a certain number of tickets before, and now it seems it's not completely quiet, but it drops. So we didn't, I think, ask ourselves the right questions, and hence we didn't ask them the right questions. And I think eventually there were some professional issues that impacted their decision. Maybe they were not substantial, maybe they were not crucial, but they were just the fuel that helped them to take a different turn in one junction, try somebody else, somebody else gets a chance, they open the door, if they do a good job and somebody opened the door for them, they will probably know what to do. So I think we misinterpreted some of the signals retrospectively.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think the biggest takeaway that I'm hearing kind of going back is it sounds like it's a lot of the deeper questions, right? And then the signals, like the initial signal you're calling out, it's like, okay, versus the typical customer that is going to renew, they're not asking the questions that you would expect them to ask, which prompted your team for not, or yourself and the team not digging deeper, it sounds like. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I would expect somebody who's going for renewal, and we were talking about, again, I think a 2 years renewal, and given the history that we had, which was not short, other 2 or 3 years before, what are your plans? Or how will you improve the service and the product that we were providing at the time? What can we do more? I mean, today I know that these are the things that I would like to hear from customers, and if I would like to talk about it and they are not really interested, then that's a bad signal for me. The question is at what stage I find out about it, and I think when we found about it, it was too late. Because eventually we actually connected all the dots together, but that was too late. Yeah, so I think asking the right question was from both aspects. Asking the right questions, the team that we worked with, which as they showed less interest, let's say in year 2, we should have picked it up and try to find out what are the professional aspects. Again, I cannot go to specific details, but we
Sure.
probably will, if we ask the right question about the professional, the lack of questions that they have, the lack of feedback, because they were very engaged in year 1. That's one. The other thing is to try and determine that actually the person that was actually the budget approver was not the only decision maker, and he was very much relying on his team recommendations. So when we were very sure about that, we should have asked again, or bring this topic with him and kind of make it clear that we feel that there is not the same level of engagement, and try to bring everyone in the same room, at the same table, and try to sort it out in a much earlier stage.
Got it. No, 100%. Yeah, I think it's actually interesting when we're talking about asking the right questions, whether it's the renewal as well. And could segue into the next story. Very much in customer success comes down to implementation. If customer success is responsible for that motion, and I know, and that kind of goes also back for sales too, right? Asking the right questions, making sure that they're the right customer, the right ideal customer for their solution, if it is a solution of sorts. And then, of course, even post sales and customer success, making sure that, hey, has anything changed, right? And kind of diving a level deeper. So I'm curious, you had a great story about that as well with a customer, whether
Selling to the wrong customer or not.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually a good question that kind of ties the initial discussion we had about collaboration with sales.
Exactly.
And asking the right questions. Because first of all, asking the right question is not just CS to sales. CS being, I think, I kind of like sometimes call it the quarterback of the entire organization on the vendor side. They need to know, how they operate with each and every team, and also ask the right questions. And I think that's also a mindset that needs to go from CS, but sales as well. In that specific story, I can't say that we sold, because that was a very big company that we're responsible for the implementation, very big project. So selling another project to a customer was not something unheard of, right? That's fine. That's what we did.
Yep.
And then the function that was doing the customer management, it was not called CS at the time, was puzzled because the project that was sold was not something that we've implemented before. So this was the first time, and that was not a small company. So what do you do, right? And you know that eventually we didn't ask. We knew from quite the beginning that this project was sold as a first project to build some confidence, to show some track record, and then go for a bigger project. Okay, without revealing too much detail. So that was like a strategic project with a customer that was around but not spending much. And sales found, the right gap that we could potentially fill in. And this ended up with a very, without getting into it, it was a very long process of, designing a solution, right? Talking about designing a solution for a customer when it was sold as if it exists. So at least that was not I mean, the initial surprise was there. After that, we kind of aligned with sales and understood. So we asked the right question. What's the purpose? Why we did that? What are we expected to do? Has the customer known? Does the customer is aware? So the customer is aware that we don't have it. Of course, the answer was no. So let's fake it until we make it. So we eventually put ourselves in a very difficult track, but at least we had the answers from sales. So I will not criticize sales because I understood the big picture. That put a lot of stress and strain on everybody. It was not just the customer engagement people, but everyone, developers, testers, project managers, whoever was involved. There was a big team involved with this project that went, uphill, downhill. But we sold probably to the right customer, but the wrong project.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then thinking about it, I don't know if I put myself in the shoes of the sales team, if I would do something different, because eventually, with all the hiccups, with all the problems that we encountered, eventually, for the long term, that became not a flagship project, but it became let's say, the way they tested us, and then they opened the door for new business. So
Okay.
if we say outcome based results, eventually we achieved what we were planning to do. The way there was a very, very difficult, very challenging, almost creating a project, not almost creating a project from scratch. That was not something that we did before. That was that's one example, right? But no, that was from established vendor. You take the risks. You need to prove yourself. You know what you have behind it. In a year or two from now, and and you take everyone for a ride, right? That's maybe a one case that still I have burns somewhere in my experience about this project. Also, now the other opposite one is a startup. So you have a startup, you have a product that's okay. It's not a demo, it's not a POC, it's a product. It's a product that still evolves. It has bugs, and then you think you know who your ICP, what your ICP is, and then this is where things go wrong, because sales at the moment need to bring customers, they need to bring clients. Are they bringing necessarily the right clients, the one that will best fit the SaaS product that you're trying to sell? Not necessarily. Okay, so that's other challenge. So you are actually doing a few things as customer success at this time. You're helping the product to mature, you're getting the customer feedback, you understand from the trenches what problems are there, how you prove the value, how to prove the use case for our customers. That's fine. And then at the same time, you're actually helping or experimenting with customers that should not be your customers anyway. And then the question is, are you looking at it from I put I point the finger to sales and say that's their problem? No, I would say this is what I always preach. Also, when I consult and I'll try to also prove it in the way I work day to day. Take it and understand how you leverage it eventually. We turn these customers to eventually to a good customer if we can, and if we not, let's learn why they were not. Maybe they were too small. Maybe the tech stack is not relevant to what we are trying to do. Maybe their expectations are completely different. Maybe they're too big and they have a team that does something similar to what we do to our product, or they're so big that they have a lot of products, and then we're just getting lost. There were different reasons why they are not, but at least try to, again, going back to sales. That's another feedback. So we talked about good examples and advocacy, but okay, let's learn from bad experiences with customers and find a way to say, okay, this type of customers, I don't know, in this region, in this size, when they don't have a focal point, they don't have an owner, or they're too big, very much big, they are not the right fit to begin with when we are still stabilizing the product.
100%. No, I love I love these stories because I'm seeing something that, and like an overarching theme of where it becomes a challenge, like long-term, right? Because when we're talking about implementation and that, that past story, essentially like sales is like overpromising, right? And it's something that's completely new, and it sounded like it required a lot of resources across different teams. Is that right,
If
Guy?
we talk about the first example,
Yeah,
yes. The
yeah,
second
100%.
example was SaaS product, so very, let's say, lean implementation, but still we had a lot of hiccups. In the first one, that was a very resource intensive.
Right. No, 100%. And then also too, like now flipping to the most recent story that you just mentioned at the startup, right? And whether you're trying to, and again, like you're trying at a startup, you're trying to figure out what your ICP is, right? Like you're trying to figure out who's your ideal customer, and you're gonna go through those challenges. But at the same time, if you kind of give an environment where sales is continuing to sell to someone who's completely opposite, and you know who your ICP is, a similar problem happens. You're bringing in more resources. You're having more quote unquote rescues or saves, in which in turn, in both scenarios, it would probably drive up your cost to serve and a lot of resources internally.
Yes, it does. I think we should accept that a startup at a certain size, when still, well, let's say the technology still matures, or even if they grow very fast, but the nature of it is that we have to run very fast, and bad things will happen. At least it needs to be well known across the company. Usually, it's not a big company, so sales, CS, pre-sales, engineering, or product. They are not. It's not like a huge team, right? So everybody needs to understand in which cases, in which type of customer, it's going to be a more easier implementation, right? A more easy ride. Maybe the onboarding will be easier. In which cases it's not. We learn together. The question is, what happens if sales feels that the easiest sell is to the ones that are considered already. I haven't come across that intentionally they bring their own customers, because eventually they churn, so the next year will be bad, and we
Right.
don't want to have that. That's obviously, if we align on business outcomes and growing the company, growth comes from existing customers. You bring main majority of the customers as bad customers, we don't grow.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think eventually it's just a message that gradually is built, but you need the collaboration, by the way, not just run by sales. You need a strong product team to kind of direct everyone and help to shape it in a way that everybody understands what's the best way to sell, what's the best way to onboard and to serve, hopefully long term.
yeah, no, 100% agree. I think that the key thing too that you called out, which requires, again, this is why like everyone needs to be bought in, like you said, product, sales, post sales, even marketing. It's at the end of the day, the majority of your revenue, undoubtedly long term, is going to come from your existing customers. And I think a lot of people tend to, especially when it comes to CS, right? It's been this battle, right, of the undersupported team, not getting the right resources at a lot of organizations, but at the same time, that's where a good chunk of your revenue is going to come from, whether it's from the existing renewals, upselling and expansion. So I think you bring up a great point.
And I think that if those cases of churn happen, definitely in a startup, you do even a basic root cause analysis. What went wrong, right? Other than
Yeah.
the fact that you think it's not the right customer, try to clarify, distill those reasons for everyone to understand. And then sometimes you say, oh, the sales know about it. Well, they don't, because you just tell them it's the wrong ICP, but they don't know much. Can you highlight those 3 points why it was a bad fit? As I said, it could be that we don't have an owner at all. Somebody else bought it because they have a budget, but they dropped it on a different team. The technology, they are not. Some early startups, they need the customers that are willing to experiment, right? They have some kind of a startup mindset on their own, even if they are big, right? Some other organization cultures don't accept that. I have a lot of companies that work before. They said we need off-the-shelf products, 5 years in the market, minimum revenue. You need to show me a lot of things before I do business with you. That's fine. But there are other customers that were much more willing to experiment. So all of that things, they eventually, if they are being analyzed, even if on a high level, it's easier then to show to sales, or product or other teams what the conclusions are. And I think that's on CS.
Awesome. No, 100% agree. I think there's some good learnings here. that we've taken away. And I think, again, a lot of it has to do with the alignment across all different teams, especially sales, um, collaborating with different functions. But I guess like if you had to kind of leave the audience with a couple other points, as far as like the takeaways from your learnings here, what would they be?
For customer success, there are so many things that we can do. First of all, I'm a true believer that we continuously learn, right? We
Sure.
learn from all of those experiences. So good experiences, bad experiences, have some reflection. Okay, we always uh, tell ourselves that we need to be we have our soft skills. We know how to talk to customers. We ask the right questions, hopefully. But if things don't go well to you, maybe they went very well. Have some reflection. Be honest with yourself. Think about what went well for you, and if it didn't, why. And if you don't have all the answers, then ask for help, right? Try to learn more. I mean, the information is out there. Come on, we know that today.
Right.
It's not difficult today to watch a movie, to watch a clip, to read an article, to go to an FAQ, to do a quick tour of some sort of a product. Everything is out there. And if it's not out there, then ask your AI agent and probably will get some answer. I'm not sure if they're all accurate. But, everything is there. So I would say learning, have a learning mindset. Be curious and be honest with yourself. Uh, and as you grow professionally, remember that there's always something that you can learn from somebody else, from a best practice. We don't hold everything in our head. So I think that's what I would leave the audience, because those cases that I shared eventually prove to me that there is always one more question that you can ask. There is one more alignment that you
Yeah,
can do. There is always something that you could at least think about. What else did I miss? Definitely on the churn story, but also when we are doing post-mortem, for example, on a customer that was not the right fit.
for sure. No, I love it. I guess like on that note too, I like to read a lot of books in terms of self-help, and there's tons of courses out there too, but I'm curious as far as like anything that you would recommend that you found to be helpful in your career.
So I read a few books in recent years that were not necessarily customer success. That's the other thing that I like to do. I like to read books that help me or help
Sure.
customer engagement, but they are a bit different. I don't know if you call it psychology or organizational behavior. Few wants to mention Atomic Habits by James Clear. So Atomic Habits is a great book to kind of teach you, how to build your habits, and
Hmm.
that's on a professional level, that's on a personal level, family, your hobbies. I mean, this guy looks about it from a different perspective. It resonated very well with me because that's how I built myself. I'm a sport addict, so I do my sports every day. So that's
Nice.
something that you have to build as a small habit that gradually is built. The same thing about different professional aspects. So definitely this one, and it will definitely help any professional. Um, the other one that I would recommend, it's a bit of an old book, but I'm not sure, Built to Last, that speaks about some of the
Built to
biggest companies
last.
in the previous century, it sounds like many years ago, and why certain companies survived over 100 years and some others don't. So that's just a good book to read to get a different perspective of how things evolved since even this book was actually released. Another one is The Startup of You by the LinkedIn founder. So, all of us today in this world, we are doing our own marketing, our own promotion, right,
Of
Joey?
course.
And myself as well. So you cannot live in a world that has so many channels and so many social networks and so many opportunities and not thinking about yourself as a startup. And when I read this book, I said, oh my God, that's exactly what, and I read it about, I don't know, 7 years back, but it's very good. Last one that I would recommend, it's a bit funny book, but it's called Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erickson, and it's called How to Understand Those Who Cannot Be Understood. And I don't know if you read the book about
I
those
have not.
four colors: blue, red, green, yellow, and he built it on top of other frameworks that exist And that, for me, in customer service, it helps. It's not like I'm coloring everyone now and say, you're blue, you're green. But again, different perspectives, different learnings, different inputs. So you kind of helps you to maybe fine-tune the way that you analyze certain people. No misconceptions, but it is a very funny book, especially by the title. So then you say, oh, am I surrounded by idiots? No, we are not. But, maybe we're surrounded by people that we need to spend a bit more time and effort to actually understand what they need, which is exactly what we need to do with our customers, right?
100%. No, I love it. I think I have not read the book. I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I'm definitely gonna have to check it out.
He has other books after that, but start with this one.
Surrounded by idiots. I love it. No, I think it's important, right? Because I think that's an important one, and all good recommendations. I've read Built to Last. It's definitely interesting. I almost want to read it back now. I read about probably
I think I need to read it again.
Yeah, 10, 12 years ago. I'm curious how things change, if concepts are still relevant. I mean, like it's a whole nother thing. And it's really interesting to see how things evolve. But like going back to Surrounded by Idiot, I think it's important, right? Because like at the end of the day, we can get caught up in our own, like, especially if we're working one-to-one with a customer, our needs as opposed to the customer needs, the things like the unspoken objections, like trying to understand and see their point of view. And I think like,
not
that's
just
a
customers. Everyone in the
Okay.
organization.
Everyone.
You're now working for a big organization, so
Yeah.
everyone basically. I would keep my family aside because that's too much to analyze. But come on, I mean, we all work with people. If they could be customers, partners, peers, colleagues, reports, management. Everybody needs to be understood eventually. I hope so.
100%. No, definitely. I think if we were to all tackle the analyzing of our family, forget it. I think that it's a whole nother job within itself. So
That's a different topic for a different conversation.
Exactly. No, but these are great. Guy, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Joey. Pleasure
Lots of great learnings. I guess where can everybody find you and learn more from you?
First of all, as we found each other on LinkedIn or in Success Hacker webinars, but which we do find ourselves from time to time.
Sure.
LinkedIn for sure. I connect with a lot of people. I do my own consultancy. I have my own website, the cscycle.com, that has a lot of articles, playbooks, recordings as well. So I will definitely put your recording as well when that's live. And I write on LinkedIn. I have my own, the CS Cycle newsletter on LinkedIn as well, that I try to write every few weeks and provide some insights, bring my own, belief in how we should operate as CS professionals, as CS executives. Yeah, that's my passion, and I'm trying to do that as much as possible in different, let's say, media channels.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love it. And it's always great when you have that passion for it, because then you kind of, it's fun. I think that's like the biggest takeaway. Yeah.
Hopefully it will stay and it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. We'll include those links in the description for the audience. That way they could get easy access to it. But again, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Guy. Lots of great learnings, and look forward to chat with you soon.
Yes. Thank you very much, Joey. It's been a pleasure.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you got some value from this conversation, hit subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with someone who's also out there trying to build a better customer success or go-to-market strategy, even if it's messy along the way. And if you want more frameworks, tools, automated playbooks, check out jodastechtouch.com and subscribe to our newsletter. That link is in the description. Thanks so much for being here. Keep building, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one. Quick note before we wrap, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions shared here are of my own or those of my guests, and don't reflect the views of any current or former employers, clients, or partners. We might reference tools, platforms, or companies, but nothing shared here should be taken as fact, endorsement, or criticism. Do your own research and always consult your team or legal counsel when making any business decisions. This content is not legal, financial, or business advice. It's just us sharing what's worked, what hasn't, and how we've learned from both. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.